The 2026 FIFA World Cup runs from June 11th through July 19th across 16 cities here in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. I'm Paul Comfort, and on this episode of Transit Unplugged, we're talking about something really fascinating, how public transportation is stepping onto the world stage as cities prepare for this 2026 FIFA World Cup. Now, a lot of people look at the World Cup and think about the matches, the stadiums, the crowds, the excitement, but behind all of that is something absolutely essential: mobility. How are you going to get to and from the games? How do you move huge numbers of people safely, efficiently, and in a way that leaves visitors with a great impression of your city? Well, for many of these host cities, one of the main ways the world experiences the event is through public transit. And my guest today is Dan Zukowski, who recently wrote a terrific piece on how cities are preparing their transportation systems for the World Cup. He is a writer for Smart Cities Dive, a top online publication he writes a lot about public transportation and other topics. And we're going to see how agencies and cities are preparing, what they're doing right now, and what fans and riders will actually see when the games arrive, and why this could have a lasting impact far beyond soccer, especially in cities like Los Angeles as they look ahead to the 2028 World Olympics. And so this is a chance for transit cities to really shine. The cities in the United States that have the World Cup coming to them are Atlanta, Boston, Dallas, Houston, Kansas City, Los Angeles, Miami, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, San Francisco Bay Area, and Seattle. And Canada, Toronto, and Vancouver also have games coming. The opening match will be held June 11th in Mexico City, and the final match July 19th in New York, New Jersey area. We're going to be having Transit Unplugged TV cameras go down to the Miami games and film some around there and show you what it's like on game day there in Miami. But today, let's find out what cities are doing to prepare for the games coming there and what it could look like. This is Dan Zukowski, the writer for Smart Cities Dive. Great to be with Dan Zukowski today, who recently wrote a great piece on how cities are preparing their transportation systems for the World Cup, and he's here to tell us about it. Thanks for being with us, Dan.
Well, thank you for having me, Paul.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit. You write for Smart Cities Dive and other locations, right?
I'm senior transportation reporter for Smart Cities Dive. That's a full-time job for me.
Okay.
I cover a wide variety of things from public transportation to intercity rail, intercity bus. I look at some of the new technologies like robo-taxis and air taxis. And I follow, of course, especially federal policy and funding that affect all of these issues.
So you were just in Washington, D.C. last month and talked to the APTA Legislative Conference. Tell us about what you talked about there.
Yeah, we talked about how you communicate with the folks on public transportation. What do people want to hear about? What do they want to learn about? And it was a really great session that we had. So glad we were able to do that.
Yeah, and it was on C-SPAN, right? That's pretty cool.
It was. Yeah, sure was. Yep.
That's great. Well, that's what we want to talk about today. What do people want to talk about transportation? And as you covered very well in your article, and I'm hoping you'll explain it today even further, public transit agencies across America are putting a lot of emphasis. This is their moment on the world stage, right? To carry people to the FIFA World Cup games in their cities. So you mentioned you cover transportation and mobility from a lot of angles. What drew you to this story? And when did you realize the World Cup isn't just a sports story, it's really also a transit story?
Yeah, well, when you think about it, you've got 11 host cities just in the U.S., each with 6, 8, 9 matches. Tens of thousands of people need to get to each of these stadiums. There'll be an influx of visitors both from other points within America and from overseas. And all of this is happening on top of just the regular day-to-day transit agencies getting people back and forth to work or home or whatever. So I started to think about this and say, well, what's the issues around this? What are transit agencies preparing for? How are they looking to manage this important event that's coming up for them?
Yeah. So it kind of mobility, it's kind of at the center of things, right? When it comes to these events, because you got to get people there. And most transit agencies are already at capacity, just running their day-to-day service.
That's absolutely true. And not only the capacity of the service, but think about the people who run the agencies themselves. So everything they have to do now is on top of their regular job of keeping the transit agency running smoothly, right?
Yep. And I know on the horizon, we've got the LA Olympics coming up.
Yep.
in a couple years, and Stephanie's working hard to get her agency ready. And then I've been with Jay Fox at Utah getting ready for the Winter Olympics a little further out, 2034. But do you think the 2026 World Cup is a real coming out moment for public transportation in the United States?
I think a lot of agencies are treating it that way, LA Metro being one of them. And you probably know that they have this 28 by 28 project, which they developed a number of years ago. In fact, I remember Nadine Lee was part of it when she was still there. She's now the CEO of DART. But it's looking ahead at the 28 Olympics and all the things they needed to do there. But they also have the Super Bowl next year and, of course, the World Cup this year. So they've had a lot of projects. They've been building a lot of things. And they have just opened up the extension of the D line on May 8th, subway. So they've been doing a lot of things. Atlanta just launched a few weeks ago a new whole bus network redesign, as well as a new bus rapid transit line. MBTA is spiffing up the Foxborough station where their passengers will go to get to the stadium there. So there's a lot of things that are going on that will kind of spiff up the site for visitors and for riders to come.
Yeah, you think about a game like FIFA Cup, just like the Olympics, we'll get a lot of international visitors, right? People that don't have cars. And so transit is going to be maybe their only option.
Yeah, and you think about it, especially if you think about people coming from Europe or Japan where public transit is just the norm.
Right.
I mean, I go to those cities all the time. I was just in Japan last year. That's the way people get around. The car is secondary in many cases. So they're going to be looking to public transit in our U.S. cities. But at the same time, they're not going to know where to go, how to get there, how to even pay the fares and so forth.
Right.
So a big issue for the transit agencies is really helping out even visitors from other U.S. cities. They're not going to be familiar with the transit system in San Francisco or wherever. So it's important that the transit agencies put these customer service people or transit ambassadors out there on the stations to help folks know where to go, how to get there, and make it go more smoothly.
Yeah. Well, let's do it then. Let's go there. Let's unpack what have you figured out that all these cities are doing to get ready, and what are they going to do, on game days?
Yeah, I think the big thing really is that what I've been told is adding bus and train service. That may mean borrowing buses from a nearby community if you don't have enough that you think in-house, even contracting out for bus services. Another part of it is going to be maintenance. You want to get everything through the shop that you can before the first match, right?
Yeah, you don't want any breakdowns with international visitors going to the game.
Exactly. And in fact, I've even been told that what they should be doing is having maintenance people on site at different points along a rail line or along a bus route, so that if something does break down, there's maybe somebody there, especially if it's a minor thing that can be taken care of easily. So you've got to have maintenance, you've got to have the equipment to carry people, the excess ridership. And then again, you need those people to help the visitors and the riders get around. So whether we call them customer service folks or transit ambassadors, that's a third pillar of what's going to be necessary.
So when it comes to service planning these routes, is it a lot of like park and ride? You pick people up on a park and ride and then take them there, or what's the game plan?
Yeah, it's going to be different elsewhere. For example, at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, there will be no parking on site.
Really?
Yeah. They are essentially making sure that the only way you get there is through bus or train. There's some small off-site parking, I've been told, but it's not going to be a large amount, and you have to have an advance ticket to use that and so forth. So what I think most cities are hoping is that the balance of people who go to these games are going to be using public transportation. But let's not forget there also will be Uber, Waymo perhaps in some of those cities like LA, San Francisco. People going to try to ride their bike, or scooters. And if that's something that the agencies want to do or the city wants to do, they may have to set up corrals and let people know, if you want to ride your bike there, here's the corral where you put it. Okay. You're not just going to pull up and so forth. So curb management becomes a big issue of this, where you have pickup and drop-offs for taxis and Ubers and so forth. A lot of that planning has to go into this as well. And then you add on top of that law enforcement. Security, law enforcement has to understand where, for example, if they need to close a road for some emergency, what roads can be closed, where they can redirect traffic, what the hot spots might be in traffic, just for normal traffic getting around. I mean, if I were had to drive somewhere in Boston around one of those matches, I wouldn't go anywhere near Foxborough or Stadium,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of things have to come into place across a number of agencies beyond just the transit agency.
Now, like a lot of sporting events, I'm sure there's a longer period of time for people to get into the stadium. People are coming in a couple hours before, but then when the match is over and people hit the door, what's happening then with crowd management, long queues, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the transit agencies are aware of that, and that's something they will have to look at. And it's not like, if you look, many of these stadiums are football stadiums where people will show up very early. They'll have their tailgating parties and so
Right.
forth. But even then, I think most stadiums are going to be limiting to people coming in no earlier than about 4 hours before the match.
Okay.
So it will help get people in. But yeah, we all know, we've all been to football games and baseball stadiums and so forth, and the crunch is getting out, right?
Yeah.
So again, that a lot of that is going to be pre-planning, and it's going to be the help of law enforcement to direct traffic and make sure things run smoothly. One of the things that I've been told is that people are coming not just for the match, but they'll come to a city also to enjoy whatever is in the city. If you're going to come from overseas or even from another part of the U.S. into New York to go to the matches in New Jersey, you're going to want to see Times Square, the Statue of Liberty, those kinds of things if you've never done that before. So it's also where the hotels are available, what other people want to do to get around within those cities beyond just getting to and from the stadiums for the matches.
Thanks for listening to the Transit Unplugged podcast. We are so glad you're here. If you're enjoying this show, we know you'll love our other transit industry programs. On Transit Unplugged TV, Paul Comfort explores the food, culture, and transit systems around the globe. You get to see everything. You'll love this show. And every week, we also offer up the Transit Unplugged News Minute, where you can get the latest industry headlines in less than 60 seconds. You can find out more at transitunplugged.com. Now back to Paul Comfort for this edition of the award-winning Transit Unplugged podcast.
As you looked at all these cities around the country that are working on this, were there any examples that stood out of maybe especially smart or especially forward-thinking preparations that stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I have to go back to LA on this, and not because I'm favoring LA or because I used to live there, but again, I think just starting earlier on, I think this 28 by 28 plan is started about 10 years ago or close to it. And again, it's forward thinking. They've been building new rail lines. They've been extending things. They've been building some beautiful new train stations, more bus service. The LAX People Mover is supposedly close to opening. Hopefully
Right.
will be open in time for the first match. And that's going to help a lot. If you fly into LAX and need to go somewhere, you know how crazy that place can be.
Yeah. Can you describe that a little bit further for people that don't know what a people mover is?
Yeah, it's basically a train. Alstom is actually the company that's done all of this. And it will take people to and from the terminals to an outlying location where from there they can get their rental cars, or it will connect with a metro stop and so forth. So that trying to actually clean up a lot of the traffic that actually really jams up the front of the terminals. You'll be able to get the Ubers and so forth out at that location as well.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, there's been a lot of, I mean, I've experienced it myself multiple times. You got to walk quite a ways to get to the Uber, Lyft, drop-off, and pickup points at the airport. Will all that be addressed by this people mover?
Yeah, supposedly, yeah. I'm anxious to see it myself, but yeah, that is supposed to be something that, again, kind of cleans up the craziness at LAX. Yeah.
That's good. Are there any other interesting things right now that you can see cities doing other than what you've already mentioned? Anything kind of unusual or different? I'm sure some are setting up park and rides, right? Where there's a spot where you go and you park your car and you come in by bus or shuttle bus, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Signage, information they're putting out to the public. What stood out to you there?
Yeah, multilingual signage will be important. One thing that was brought to my attention was delivery trucks. Okay. And not to have delivery trucks create even more of a traffic problem at the high points of people getting in and out of the stadium. So coordinating with whatever the suppliers are in some way to get those trucks into the stadium early and get them out so there's not additional traffic there, unnecessary traffic. Yeah, and again, I just go back to all the needs that the coordination has to happen with local law enforcement as well as Department of Homeland Security. And part of that is because these are such high-profile matches, we would expect to see dignitaries from other countries where their teams are playing here, or possibly even from our president wanting to go to one of the matches. And that's going to complicate things even more. There would be motorcades, there would be excess security, and so forth. So I'm sure a lot of that information won't come out until much closer to it, so it's not tipped off. But that's something that, again, these cities, including their transit and law enforcement, will have to help plan for.
Yeah, one thing we haven't said explicitly, but it should be mentioned, is that a lot of these matches are happening on weekdays. So it's not like your normal NFL game where you got 80,000 people coming on a Sunday when the fleet is really only, you got a half your fleet back, you can add in service. How much harder does that make the job, you think, for a transit agency?
It definitely does, and I've talked with folks about that too. And it's especially on the West Coast because I believe many of at least the games that are broadcast at night, I'm not sure what the whole broadcast schedule is yet, but if it's broadcast at night, it would be, let's say, 5:30 rush hour time in LA or San Francisco at the height of the rush hour. Yeah. And so now you have to get everybody else home on top of getting people to the stadium. So it just requires additional planning on top of that, and probably hoping that people will work from home that day or leave work early, make those decisions. Again, it's going to be a dry run in essence for the Olympics in LA 2 years from now. But they also have gone through that in the past. The last time they had the Olympics was 1984, and that was long before remote work. But that actually worked out pretty well. People did understand there's a lot going on, and maybe I should not get in the way of it.
Yeah. And, as you mentioned, this goes beyond just buses and trains. There's so much else happening: taxis, ride hailing, bike scooters, street closures, deliveries, law enforcement, VIP movements, everything you've talked about. Is this forcing cities, you think, to think more holistically about mobility than maybe they normally do?
I would hope so. But I mean, when I talk to city leaders, mayors, and heads of Department of Transportation, I think they already are thinking very holistically, because all of these other transportation modes play into everyday life. And then there are new ones coming, like robo-taxis and air taxis in some areas in the not too distant future. So there's been a lot, and over the course of the past few years that I've been reporting on this, I have seen a lot of thinking ahead, planning, and talking about how we get all these things to work together.
Yeah, it's key. I mean, I remember when I was CEO of the Baltimore Transit System, we were a state agency, the Maryland Transit Administration, and yet I had to work hand in glove with the Baltimore City Department of Transportation and their Public Works Department, because we're on their roads, we're at their street lights, we're trying to do traffic signal priority. So a lot of cities have already worked in that coordination, but I don't know how much the public understands that there are different agencies with different priorities, but they all have to work hand in glove to make it come together.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's a big machine, and that makes it all work. And, we're getting a lot of, you talked about traffic signal priority. We're getting a lot more of AI technology involved in things like that, which hopefully makes that smoother. But I'm sure there will be a lot of debriefs after in these cities and in the transit agencies and transit departments after the fact, and saying, what could we have done better? What lessons have we learned? What can we take forward from this?
That's a good segue to my next question was, do you think that one of the big opportunities of preparing and surviving for an event like this is actually winning over new riders and leaving behind something better, which that could be better wayfinding, better customer communication, stronger regional coordination, or just a more positive public image for transit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the holy grail for any of our transit agencies would be if the ridership increases and sticks.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have to look at that maybe 6 months down the road. But if people find out that even local residents who, hey, I'm not going to even think about driving to the stadium, or I can't park there or whatever, I'm going to take public transit maybe for the first time or very rarely. And they find out, hey, we've got some cool stuff here. The trains are new, the buses are on time, all of those things. And maybe that leaves them with the idea that, yeah, I can maybe use this more and I can get there faster, cheaper, easier, not have to worry about my car, parking and all those things. That would probably be the biggest win for any of the transit agencies coming out of this.
Yeah. Again, to go back to my time in Baltimore, just like across America, Dan, less than 5% of the average Americans ride transit on a daily basis. And the one time you get them on board for us in Baltimore was game day. To get to the Orioles game, Baltimore Orioles or the Baltimore Ravens, we had light rail that served them really well, and commuter rail as well. It would drop you right off at the stadium. So getting people to kind of taste it the first or second time and then like it because it's a great experience. Yeah. I mean, that's key to make people say, oh, you know what? Maybe I should try this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is familiarity. I mean,
yeah,
I grew up in New York City. So I grew up riding subways and buses. That was like totally normal. My dad taught me how to ride the subway before he taught me how to ride a bicycle because it was more useful, right? So I think the more people are exposed to public transportation and have a good experience, they will want to use it.
If this all goes off well, what do you think we're left with as a transit industry here in the U.S.?
If it all goes off well, I think not only as an industry, but on an individual level within each city, it tells the story of why transit is needed, why it's safe, why it works, especially in high traffic environments. So I think it's going to be really key to each of the host cities that it comes off well. And if it does, it's going to tell their local residents, especially, that this is something important. We always have these discussions around funding, whether it's local funding or state or federal funding, and is it worth it? And where can we cut here? Where can we cut there? And so forth. If people see it, if the residents see it as something worthwhile, they'll want to fund it.
Yeah. It shows their city in a very positive light.
Yeah.
It was key for the successful image. We know that getting a sporting event like this is a real badge of honor for a city.
Yeah.
And making it come off well, transit's role in that. Yeah, I love that it could leave a positive taste in everybody's mouth the next time the bill comes up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And people do like transit. I cover transit ballot measures every election season. And year after year, we always see the bulk of those actually pass, which tells us that the public wants public transportation. So again, the more that the results of what happens during the World Cup shines a positive light on public transportation, the more I think the story goes in their favor.
Yeah, that's great, Dan. Well, if people want to read more of your great stories like the one that I read that made me reach out to you, where can they get a hold of them?
Yeah, Smart Cities Dive. It's all one word, .com. And we publish 5 days a week and we have a weekender. We'd love to see you subscribe, and it's free. Just have to sign up.
Great. Well, thanks again for sharing with us a little bit of the global perspective here in the United States about how cities are preparing for the World Cup. Any final thoughts you want to share?
I think I'm looking forward to this, as I'm sure you are, looking forward to seeing how it all works out. I will be following up with stories both before and after the event. And I just think it's going to be exciting for all of us to see how this plans out.
Are you going to plan to go to any games yourself?
I haven't yet so far.
Okay, yeah. We're going to do, on our TV show, we're going to do a show from Miami and showcase what it's like outside the stadium and the preparations and all that kind of stuff. And, give people a first-person viewpoint of what's happening down there. So this has been a great prep session for us, for transit agencies to prep and to learn what everyone else is doing. Thanks so much for being our guest today.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. Enjoyed being with you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Transit Unplugged, the world's #1 transit executive podcast. I'm Julie Gates, executive producer of the podcast. Many thanks to the team that makes this show happen. Host and producer Paul Comfort, producer Chris O'Keefe, editor Patrick Emile, associate producer Cindy Raskin. Transit Unplugged is being brought to you by Modaxo, passionate about moving the world's people. If you would enjoy behind-the-scenes insights and updates from the show, sign up for our weekly newsletter, which has links to can't-miss conversations with the biggest names in mobility. Head to transitunplugged.com and scroll to the bottom of the page to sign up. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Transit Unplugged.